We are now firmly situated in this Lenten journey, a time of fasting and of doing penance. We read in the Gospel about Jesus spending time in the desert himself. He went there to be tested, and he experienced all kinds of temptations there. He emerged victorious, just as he was to emerge victorious after the greatest test of all, his passion and death. And he emerged victorious in the resurrection. This account of the temptation we are given in the Gospel of Mark is really almost like a telegram. It's very short. It tells us in 2 very quick verses compared to the lengthier versions we find in the Gospel of Matthew and even longer in Luke. Typically, the language of Mark is also a lot stronger. It's more emotional. You've heard me say how Jesus expresses a lot more emotion as Mark describes him and uses words like moved with pity and verses of that sort. And we know that Jesus went into the desert, but Mark uses a phrase that the Spirit drove Jesus into the desert. Drove, to be driven. It was like he was impelled to go there. He had to go there. We can't think of Jesus not wanting to go, but to be driven is rather a profound sense of being called. It shows us the underlying closeness between Jesus and the Spirit, who impelled him into that desert. Mark doesn't talk about the content of the various temptations, as do the other 2 Gospels do. He simply states that he remained for 40 days and was tempted by Satan. And wild beasts are traditionally symbols of evil, and like Satan, they prowl around looking for anyone to devour in their weakness. This time is one of testing for Jesus and for us. Jesus endures successfully, demonstrating that he is the Messiah. Both Moses and Elijah before him endured such periods of fasting and tempting in the desert, and Jesus proves that he is their heir. The 40 days is also a symbolic illusion of the 40 days of the chosen people spent in the wilderness being tested by God. They spent those years of wandering the desert in great adversity, but through them learned some very great lessons. All testing requires privation and suffering. It involves doing without the comforts we are used to, whether this be health, little luxuries, or even emotional supports. If all testing involves suffering, then in spiritual terms we can say that all suffering is a testing. Physical suffering is a testing. And this is indeed so. In physical suffering, we find all sorts of things removed from us as we normally consider essential for our daily life. And not only our health, but also in our comfortable routines, things and people we have around us. I would say that in these last 11 months, we've been in a type of Lent when we've had to be emotionally, physically, and sometimes spiritually distant from one another, physically distant from one another. This has been a long period of a Lenten fast from one another, from our loved ones, from traveling, from being able to physically be present with one another. Any realistic person dreads being put to the test, but it's something we all have to endure. It's an essential element of our pilgrimage of our faith. But you notice that even for Jesus, it was a fixed time of 40 days. The good news is that there is always an end. The Church gives us this liturgical season of Lent to help us endure the time of testing whenever it comes our way. Here it's a fixed day of 40 days, but in our lifetime there will be moments of testing, of struggle, of darkness. In Lent, we are invited to undergo some small hardship so that when a real hardship comes to pass in our life, we may overcome it. It may not overwhelm us or bring us too far down. We recognize that in these and all sufferings, we must endure are part and parcel of our life, of a Christian, and that they are only a sign of the victory that is to come. In these last weeks, I've been thinking about suffering and pain and the life of sin in our lives, because as I've taken over as director of the Shrine of St. Anthony, I've heard many more confessions than I have in more recent years. And I've become familiar with many of the individuals who come to the shrine here. And it's fitting that at the same time that I became director of the shrine, the church offered us the image of St. Joseph for this year of faith. And yes, at the shrine on Wednesdays, we do pray this prayer to St. Joseph, the foster father of Jesus. But also, I've been connected to the litany of St. Joseph in these last few weeks. And yes, it's commendable for me to pray that litany of St. Joseph, where I hear words that lift me up. St. Joseph, husband of the Mother of God. St. Joseph, upright man. But there's one verse in the litany of St. Joseph that has been my very strength and my comfort. And that's been St. Joseph, terror of demons. St. Joseph, terror of evil spirits. It's given me a lot to think about, because the evil spirits that, the beasts that were seeking to destroy Jesus in the desert, and our evil spirits in our lives are pernicious and persistent. Many times I hear people say, Father, these are the sins that I've confessed month after month, year after year. They're always with me. I think those are our personal terrors. Those are our demons with which we battle. We often say about someone who's suffering, who's battling something outrageous or difficult, and we say they have a lot of demons they're dealing with. And I don't mean actual demons, but they're dealing with their struggles, their concerns, their own humanness. We are struggling at all times with our demons. We are struggling at all times with our personal sins and brokenness. So I ask you, in this time of Lent and in this time of the year of St. Joseph, go to Joseph. Pray to St. Joseph. Ask him to help you. St. Joseph, pray for me. St. Joseph, help me in my day. St. Joseph, help me be this upright person. Help me, St. Joseph, with my demons. Help me, St. Joseph, to overcome my demons so that I can become victorious, as your son did, as your foster son did on Easter Sunday.